May I have your attention, please? So, this is crazy times. It feels very surreal. When we planned this originally, the worst of things hadn't happened. How many people were here for our July Dilemmas of Dementia thing? Okay, so we were hopeful then. We had things that we were looking forward to, so we're here because personally, we each have to take some responsibility for our lives, from our paperwork all the way through how we're going to manage having a fabulous last chapter. Do we need more chairs? We need more chairs.
There's seats up front.
Okay, good. But some people are uncomfortable up front. There's more chairs in back. So I just want to address the fact that we have I think we have an emotional and professional, as well as personal, obligation. I wanted to call this event, Let's Leave a Legacy Instead of a Mess. But my board said that wasn't very elegant, but I had to say it. So that's the personal theme of this. The responsibility that each of us have is to do everything we can to tidy things up. Who here had to follow behind somebody else and be the executor or clean up the mess for somebody else? Okay, I think that's why you're here. And there's so much we can do. And this amazing volunteer panel, all professionals, have said, I can help, I can save money, time, effort, all sorts of things. Are we running out of chairs? Okay, there's more chairs here. And so what today is about is both the personal responsibility that you want to take, that you're willing to take to address scary issues. And as each of the panel members, I've kind of arranged them in an interesting line from fiduciary to legal, and we've got, just kind of all the way down to, we have our lovely Seth, who's the funeral director for Chapel by the Sea, and Catherine, who's the one of the people who lead the grief group at Friends of Health. I want to introduce Friends of Health, my board. Can you all kind of come over here, you guys? Don't be shy. Come up. Where Jim is. Oh, there's Jim. Okay. Right. So I'm just going to introduce them. This is Nancy and Carolyn Peterson, Nancy Gardner-Carliner, Carolyn Peterson, Ann Connor, and Jen Kremen. And Ellen Campbell, who many of you are related to, or many people on Zoom related to, couldn't be here. She had a previous obligation, so it's been wonderful. And I thank you very much. Okay. Oh, yeah, Mary. What happened to Mary?
She'll be here at some point.
Okay, so Mary, who's been longer and more consistent on the Friends of Health. We used to be Friends of Hospice, we used to be Twitter, now we're not. We used to be Friends of Hospice, and then a few years ago we changed our names to Friends of Health at the request of hospice, because they said, you don't provide hospice and you don't fund our hospice program. And I went, okay. But what we do is provide individual grants to people who need help through agency referral. That's a big part of what we do. Thousands, like $15,000 a year, we go out helping people with equipment and transportation and support in the home and medicines and on and on and on. All the things that make the last chapter harder, we try to make easier. We build ramps if we need to. We help with financial help where that's needed. And the other thing we do is community education and professional education. And so we've been doing this. We started with the dilemma, what was it called? The dementia caregiving, coping with dementia something. Like
The dementia dilemma.
The dementia dilemma. That was the last one, but we started with the other one. So we have realized, when we tapped into that with the dilemmas of dementia, was that these issues are across the board, end of life. It's not just when we all lose capacity. Entropy is real. We can all feel it. So anyway, so thank you guys. And they're around if you need any help or advice, they're there. And is anybody here from the Bishoff Committee? Somebody was supposed to be here from the Bishoff Committee. We got a special grant, which is allowing us to fund most of today. It doesn't fund all of it, so if you have a little extra change to put in the donation basket, it would help us. But the Bishoff Committee is Jack and Shatter Bishoff. Anybody know them or remember? Yeah. they donate a lot of money to the community, and they helped Friends of Hospice and Friends of Help. So we fund the grief support group in addition to all of the other individual things, and now we're allowed to do more community foundations. So that's who we are. And again, it feels very surreal right now. We need more than anything to be working together, to communicating together. And so the first part of the day is really, I've given you a checklist, and each one of you, if you opened your little your things, so you can kind of go off and go like, I did that, I need to do this, and you can take care of business and take down names. Then from 11:30 to 1:30, we're going to be doing breakouts in the small room. For those of you who aren't demonstrating and want to stay, there'll be an opportunity to talk with each one of these people individually, to get brochures, to figure out where you might want to go, and their expertise available again for free. And then at about 1:30, we'll come back here, and this is when I think the real activism is going to happen. National activism is important, but community activism is even more important. We've got to figure out how to help each other. It's neighbors helping neighbors. It's how we started. It's how we're going to make it through this time. And I don't know what's going to come down, but I do know that funding is already being cut to food banks, senior centers, some transportation programs, and maybe Helen even knows more about this than I do. But it's definitely going to affect the most fragile of our elders. So those of us who can, from each according to our ability to each according to our needs, is something that I...
Welcome, everybody. Hello. Thanks for being here. My name is Maggie Watson. I'm a California licensed fiduciary. I'm also the author of A Graceful Farewell, Putting Your Affairs in Order. My husband and I co-own Mendocino Solar, and I lead seminars to help people put their affairs in order. So what a fiduciary does is we act as trustee, executor, power of attorney for healthcare or finance. We can act as conservator, trustee for special needs trusts, any of those kind of roles. We pay bills for people, and we're chosen because either families don't want their children to do it, or people do not have family to do this job, or friends, or they just want to save the peace of the family and give these jobs to a professional. So some of the so why I volunteered for this is I love this topic, and I love educating and empowering people to really take the end of their lives seriously and prepare for themselves and the people who come after them to carry out your wishes. Some of the issues that I find in this, in my profession, is that people's legal documents are not current, or some people don't have legal documents, like don't have a will or a trust or a power of attorney. I also find that people don't understand the various roles that are needed, or they don't understand the documents and what they do and when they go into effect and when the people that they name in their documents are authorized to act. So there's a lot of confusion, and in that confusion there's an inability to actually let the person know who you've named in some of these roles what their job is. So that's another aspect that we're finding, is people are they just don't know. There's also an issue of small estates. If people have like under $100,000, there's a whole different process that has to be dealt with, and we're being asked to help with that, and it's really challenging. So that's another issue. There's also an issue of, this is a funny one, when people have pay on death or transfer on death, it's also called POD. Have people heard of POD? Or pay on death? So a lot of retirement plans are that way, or IRAs, or sometimes put CDs. Well, the banks and the financial institutions are not allowed to tell the trustee who the beneficiary is. So if you do not leave that information in the document, and I present a death certificate to a financial institution, and they say, oh, there's a pay on death on this, and I say, who is it? They say, we can't tell you. And I said, well, do you contact them? Oh no, we wait for them to contact us. So you can imagine that there's probably lots of money not being claimed because people do not know that they're beneficiaries. Big issue, make sure your trustee or your executor knows who your beneficiaries are on your POD accounts in the banks and at financial institutions. And then the other thing is wishes at the end of someone's life are not specific. They haven't set up funeral arrangements or even told their loved ones what they wanted. And that's been can be an issue. So the other one is, we're going to talk about it later, but about putting a clause in your advanced healthcare directive that pertains to the death with dignity or the end of life option. And I could talk about that more later if people are interested. I think I'll leave it at that.
Hi, my name's Debra DeCarli. I'm an estate planning attorney, and where Maggie goes at it through the nitty-gritty details, my job as an estate planning attorney is to help people. Let's start with the big picture and then get down into those details, like who are your pay on death beneficiaries. And I think calling myself an estate planning attorney is very apt, because it's about having a plan. And one thing most people don't realize, it's not just about what happens after you die. An estate plan should address the stages of your life, where you are right now. If you're a couple, what happens if one of you becomes incapacitated? Then what happens after the first spouse dies? And then what happens after you're both gone? As a single, same stages. What happens if you become incapacitated? And in this area, one of the issues we struggle with clients is they don't have any children who are local, they don't have any friends that they trust who are local, and this is where Maggie's services come in, is they have to have someone to step in if they become incapacitated. So that's a big takeaway I want everybody to leave here with today. Estate planning isn't just about having a will of who gets what after you're gone. It's about planning for and taking care of yourself during incapacity, taking care of your spouse during incapacity. One thing I stress when I start working with a client is that person is always the client. Their daughter calls and wants to change something. A cousin calls, wants to change something. My job is to make sure that original person's best interests are watched out for. We're going to hear from Adult Protective Services. I've only once had to call them, and it was somebody I did not take on as a client, but there was obviously some abuse going on. The other thing Maggie brought up was people not knowing what was in their documents, not knowing what they did. I think from talking to colleagues around the state, I'm kind of unique in this. I actually take time to explain. This is what this does, this is what this does. This is how this works, this is how this works. This is how I suggest, what do you want? And we go through that process of making a plan that works for you, both now, while you're living, in the event of incapacity, and then after you've passed away, and talking about who's going to take on the roles to help you along the way is a big part of what we do. Pass it off to Susan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Baumeister. I'm here representing Adult Protective Services today. Adult Protective Services responds to reports of abuse or neglect of elder or dependent adults. And the legal definition of an elder is age 60 years of age and older. And those reports of abuse or neglect could be abuse or neglect by another person, or self-neglect or self-abuse by the person. So when APS goes into a home, I should say Adult Protective Services is also a voluntary service. Adults have the right to make their own decisions. So even though Adult Protective Services receives a referral with concerns about a person's health and safety, if the adult answers the door and refuses to speak with Adult Protective Services needs to leave. So, but we try. We're friendly. So we try to get in, and once we're in, we assess. We assess safe, independent living. And we assess those things that may be lacking, and we refer individuals to community services, many people who are up here, connect them with other people in the community who, with those services in place, can enhance independent living and increase safety in the home. I have to say the most frustrating situation that Adult Protective Services runs across is a person who has aged in place in their rural home and have disconnected from others. So that is a challenge. So part of our assessment when we go in is to identify those people who are supportive, those people who are your people, family, relatives, neighbors, people you rely on, people you regularly communicate with. And then with the person's permission, we make contact, and so we enhance that contact. So for those people who have isolated or have aged in place without planning, those are the most challenging to us. So we have to work really hard. Adult Protective Services only provides short-term case management. So Adult Protective Services, once we make contact with an individual, we don't stay on board for a lengthy amount of time. Usually 90 days. Personally, I would hear from my supervisor, like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Like, time to end it. Connect people and move on. So we rely on community hugely. And there is a concern with cuts in services that the community is going to need to be relied on more. I don't know how it can be reimagined so that community support can be there. But we have a huge, the demographic of elders in Mendocino County is the largest demographic in the state of California for counties. So keep that in mind. But I think we're all here because we care about our neighbors, we care about elders, we care about ourselves aging. It all comes down to a plan and being connected.
Hi, my name is Susan Quinn, and I am also a social worker. I am an independent advocate, and my office and practice is located in Gualala, and I will go where I am called to. So Mendocino County and definitely the Mendocino Coast. And I have a self-crafted job. I worked in the system for quite a long time. I've been doing this for 15 years. And I realized that I'm pretty radical. And I've never done really well with authority. I'm the last of 6 children in an Irish Catholic family, so So I used what was seemingly a deficit in my life and turned it into a strength. And I am a fierce and radical advocate in the medical industrial complex, when it comes to hospital discharges, when it comes to death with dignity, when it comes to aging in place, when it comes to the turmoil in families with aging in the end of life. That is a goat rodeo often. And so I've put together, I've received a vocation. It's the closest thing to being a nun, I think I will be. It's a calling. And I'm very grateful to be here today. And this is my protest. Love, intelligent love, is my protest. And I am so grateful that I am sitting in front of my teachers. You are aging in front of me, and I will be there. And I will die like you, and it's an honor to be beside my clients through this. And my role is, I have an interesting one, as my advocacy and my working with my clients goes across this whole trajectory. There's no one on this panel, or the roles that the people are on these panels, that I haven't interacted with a client. So it's very bespoke care. It's curated, it's artisanal, it's craft, and it is my art, and it's an honor, and it's complex. And I often think of myself as the Joe Pesci of aging, like I'm a fixer. And I've been a hospice social worker for a long time too. So I hang out where the veil is very thin, and that is where, maybe oddly, I find my joy, because I find freedom in impermanence. And I'd like to help anyone find that joy by being beside you and facing fear. Fear is the enemy. Fear obfuscates judgment. Fear obfuscates decision-making. Sit and face your fear with a trusted person next to you, whomever it is. Don't go it alone or you isolate. And that's not good. So, anyway.
That's what I do. Okay.
Does that make sense?